Okay, so we're going to start biological molecules by having a look at water. So the first thing you need to know is what water is made of. So you've got an oxygen, which is covalently bound to two hydrogens. Now that oxygen has a bigger nucleus. It has more protons, more neutrons. So that oxygen has a pull on the electrons. So if you remember, electrons are in shells on the outside of these atoms, and hydrogen only has one little electron. Now because that oxygen has a bigger kind of a pull, if you like, it actually draws those electrons slightly towards the oxygen. Only slightly. They don't leave the hydrogens, but they are more drawn towards the oxygen. So what that leads to is an unequal distribution. And the way we show that is because those electrons are moving a bit more towards that oxygen, that oxygen ends up slightly negative, and so slightly we write delta. It's kind of like a wiggly D. That leaves your hydrogens ever so slightly positive, so they are delta positive. Now what that means is that because of that unequal distribution, water is polar. It is not an ion, it is polar. Now that means it can form attractions. So remember, negatives and positives are opposites, they attract. So it can form attractions with lots of other things, and it can form attractions with anything else that is polar or with anything that is actually ionic, so anything that is positive or negative. Okay? So if we have a look at two waters, so if we've got one water there, we've got another water there, and remember that is delta negative, that is delta negative, these hydrogens are all delta positive, and so we can form hydrogen bonds. So hydrogen bonds are attractions. Now there are two ways to show a hydrogen bond. You can show it like that, or you can show it like that. Only one of those is necessary. Now water will hydrogen bond to one other thing. So you'll only get one hydrogen bond between these two. You could then get another hydrogen bond over here to another water. Okay? And so that's how water can start to build up. So this one could hydrogen bond to another water, for example. And that's how water gets some of its properties. Because of those hydrogen bonds, it can bond to lots and lots and lots of other waters. Now hydrogen bonds themselves are just attractions. They are quite weak. You can break them. But water, because it can form so many hydrogen bonds with so many other waters, gives it some strength, some stability. So that's our first property of water. It is polar. And it is polar because of those hydrogen bonds, because of that unequal distribution of electrons. So it is polar. So that means that it makes it a good solvent, because ions will dissolve in it. So for example, nitrates will dissolve in water. Plants can then take those up. Oxygen, carbon dioxide will dissolve in water for aquatic animals. So yes, so it's a good solvent. It also means it can transport those nutrients through a plant, through an animal. So it being polar is a very good thing for solvent. One of the other things that this polarity leads to is something called cohesion. Cohesion and adhesion. Can't spell. So cohesion is water to water. adhesion is water to any other polar or ionic surface. So water to another surface.